We are almost halfway through this legislative session. We have an 18-week session. We try and fit a year's worth of work into that. So we're pretty much nose to the wall with trying to get things done here. And that's on the policy end of it. And I just want to remind people, just as important are the things that are happening in your life too. And whether it's fighting to keep the DMV open in Dummerston, or families that are trying to find housing for their adult children who have special needs, or people who need health care or help. Like I just heard from somebody this week, a single mother who is living in a trailer and the roof is leaking, trying to figure out where to get help for that. Please feel free to contact us for those kinds of things, as well as for your policy suggestions. It's just as important what's happening on the ground level in your lives and in our friends and neighbors' lives as well too. So those things we want to make sure we're working for you as well too, and we can open doors that sometimes are not as easily opened by you. The big ticket items right now are still COVID. Things are looking a little better, but we have to be careful. We can't let up yet. And I think the governor is trying to push things a little bit right now. He just offered some suggestions for our schools that I do not agree with. And I think we need to have some discussions around that, where he wants to lessen the mandates on wearing masks. And, especially if you have children under the age of 5 who can't get vaccinated yet, this is a huge concern. So that's something we're going to be talking about. And Michelle mentioned some things going on in education, and they're trying to do a lot. And it connects somewhat to the workforce problem that we have. We lost over 20,000 people who left the workforce during COVID. And if you're seeing help wanted signs and help wanted ads in the newspapers, that's why. A lot of people left the workforce for various reasons. A lot of moms with young children left the workforce because they couldn't get daycare, or they felt it wasn't safe. A lot of people were on the edge of retirement, and that pushed them into saying, well, I'm done. And so we're trying to do what we can to help people get into the workforce and to maybe change their jobs. So one of the things in education we're looking at is the career and technical education aspects of things. Perhaps not everybody's going to go to college, but we need workers who have technical skills. We have a great technical center here in Brattleboro, and we want to make sure they get as much support. We can direct people. That last cold snap, I was getting calls from people who said they were calling the plumber because they had frozen pipes, and they were being told maybe in 2 weeks. We have to do better. We have to make sure we have people who are ready to take on the jobs that people are retiring from. And, connected to that is our housing. Before COVID, we had a housing shortage, and it's in a crisis form now. So we need to do what we can to build housing at every level: affordable housing, workforce housing. I'm not so sure the high-end housing is going to need help from us, because that's always going to happen. But there's a lot of working people that are having trouble finding any housing right now. And I was talking to John Hatton. I think John is the head of the local realtors for Windham County, and he was saying there's just hardly anything out there right now for people who are looking to buy. So that's a big concern. Of course, climate is a big concern too. In my town last year, we saw right up close and personal. In July, we had 18 inches of rain, and we had one storm that wiped out 13 roads. I think Westminster lost 14 roads. And if this is going to become an annual piece, we're not going to be able to afford it, first of all. So we have to act. We have to do what we can. Vermont has to take on its share of helping to change the culture that's contributing to climate. There's a lot of economic opportunity within that too, and we've been looking at that. I think what I'm going to do is, as our time is, I'm trying to keep track of the time here. I think what I'm going to do is stop here, because I know we're going to have questions from everybody too. So at this point, I'm going to ask Matt if he can use his technical skills and put the video on from Senator Ballot. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I'll do that, and let me know if you can hear it.
Can't hear it.
Good morning. I am State Senator Becca Ballant, one of your two senators for Windham County. I'm also the President Pro Tem of the Senate. And I am very sorry I can't be with you all in Zoom person today, but Representative Murwicki and Representative Bosselin asked me if I would record a message for all of you so you could know what was happening on my side of the State House. So I want to start by just thanking both your representatives for all of their hard work. It's a very difficult time to be someone in public office right now. There's a lot of distrust generally of government and of local officials. And I know if my email inbox and social media is any indication, I know that both your representatives are also getting quite a bit of angry emails, a lot of rhetoric. It seems like every issue that we talk about now, even something that seems rather benign on the surface, ends up being a very contentious, I won't even say conversation, because it often turns into an argument. So it's a tough time to be in public office. And I wanted to start with that because I've been really fixated lately on a bit of information I learned about from the Pew Research Center. And back in 1958, when they first started recording trust in government, about 75% of Americans said that they trusted that government would do right by them all or most of the time. 75%, 1958. Now we're at less than 30% of Americans who believe that government is really working on their behalf. And there's lots of reasons for this, but it should alarm us all, especially here in Vermont, when we have really close contact with our senators and representatives. You see us at the grocery store and at the post office, and we're just a phone call or an email away. And many of you just, stop by our houses to chat on the back porch. Just want to ground us in that, because the needs of Vermonters right now are great. They were great before the pandemic, and now the disparities are even more acute. So if you were a blue collar worker before the pandemic, you were struggling through one of the biggest gaps in economic equity that we've seen since the Gilded Age. And now, I can't even say we're out of the pandemic. Now, still in the midst of the pandemic, if you were a white collar worker, generally, before the pandemic and you were doing all right, you're doing really, really good right now. So all those supply chain issues that are impacting regular Vermonters, not really impacting people at the top. So there is a heightened sense of anxiety and fear and distrust. And I mention it because it's trickling down to our select board meetings, our school board meetings, development review board meetings. And it's really impacting our ability as Vermonters to talk to each other. So I want to start with that, because this is not the road that we want to go down. It's really not. So anything that you can do personally to bring down the rhetoric, to believe that your representatives are working on your behalf to the best of their ability, trying so very hard to represent you in Montpelier, that will help everyone have more trust in government. So there were a few things in particular that your representatives asked me to touch on. First one being the two constitutional amendments. One that is removing reference to slavery from the Vermont Constitution. And as a former social studies teacher, someone who cares deeply about history, I think this is a very important statement for us to make, that we acknowledge the wrongs of the past and that we are seeing ourselves in a new light, that we essentially, as Vermonters, are able to reinvent ourselves. What I mean by that is, if you are someone who is living in Vermont, a person of color, you may not feel completely represented or protected by a constitution that still makes reference to slavery. So Proposition 2 has passed both the House and the Senate twice, two different legislative sessions, and now we'll go on to the voters. And the second one is a Reproductive Liberty Act, which is also an amendment to the Vermont Constitution. And there's, again, been a lot of rhetoric about Proposition 5. And really at its core, what it's saying is Vermonters, regardless of your gender, should have personal autonomy over your reproductive liberty. And any conversations that happen should happen between an individual and their family and their doctor and healthcare providers, and not with the state. So again, they passed the House and the Senate twice, now going out to voters. And certainly you're going to hear a lot about both these amendments. And I encourage you, where I started from, really try to look through the rhetoric and look at what these amendments are actually saying. The other thing that Mike and Michelle asked me to touch on is the investments that we're making in economic development. And certainly I'm very concerned about the health of the economy in rural areas. And we're putting a tremendous amount of money and investments into workforce development. We know that there's an acute shortage of workers at all levels, in all industries, and it's impacting all of us. And so we're really looking at how do we support incumbent workers, maybe older workers who want to come back into the workforce? How do we support young families, whether it's a single mom or a single dad who's having a hard time finding childcare or supports for them to get back in the workforce? And also, how do we make sure that there's money for training? Because we know additional training and education costs money. And so we're really looking at making those investments in people and social infrastructure, really looking at programs at the Vermont State Colleges that will work for Vermont families to get them to a better place. I'm just looking at my list here. Of course, I can't believe I didn't start with this, which is our housing crisis. And I am the longest serving member of the Senate Economic Development and Housing Committee. It was the committee I most wanted to serve on because of workforce development and because of housing. And we have made huge investments in housing, and I'm very proud of that. But there is still so much more to do. And so what I want you all to know is we're going to be investing hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government that came to us through the ARPA legislation. And we are really looking at investing in, of course, more affordable housing, but also what we're referring to as the missing middle, which I don't really like that. Because they're not missing. They're just, essentially lower middle class workers who can't afford housing in Vermont. So they don't have the down payment, they don't have the closing costs. And we have done a lot on down payment assistance programs, but we know that there's still much more to do in that area. So critically important for all of us in Windham County, as we've seen the COVID migration, and we're gonna see more of that also when climate change continues to impact the climate in dire ways. We're going to see more people from New York and New Jersey and Connecticut looking to move northward to our beautiful state. And we want to make sure that we have the ability to accommodate more Vermonters, because we do need more families here. But we also have to make sure that housing is still affordable for Vermonters who are here right now. So that's been a critical focus of mine and continues to be this session. And of course, running through all of this, whether it's climate action, whether it's housing or workforce development, there has to be a racial justice lens that we're looking at. And we're really trying very hard to keep equity at the center of the conversations. Are our housing programs open to all, or our workforce programs favoring one group over another? And how do we essentially navigate and deconstruct a system that has been created in this country over centuries? And just going to put in a plug for one of my favorite books right now, Isabel Wilkerson. It's called Caste. It's really looking at our invisible, I say invisible to many of us who are not people of color, invisible caste system that has been at play for a very long time in this country. And as a historian, I know that to be true. And the hard part comes in, how do we dismantle it? And so I just want to assure you that both your representatives are thinking about this most sincerely, most deeply, in trying to figure out, how do we talk across class? How do we talk across race? How do we bring Vermonters together to address these issues, and do it with an open heart and an open mind, and not from a place of fear or distrust? So again, I'm sorry I can't be with you, but I look forward to hopefully soon being able to see you in person in your district very soon. So take care. Thanks for coming this morning. And hopefully our paths will cross in person soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks to Becca, and appreciate her taking the time. And she did say she wants to come back when she can do it live and have questions. And I just wanted to welcome, we have another participant here, Nader Hashim.
Hey, Mike, how's it going? Thanks for letting me in a little bit late. I was actually in a Zoom with Sarah Coffey and her constituents down in Guilford and Vernon. And when I joined this, I thought Becca was in the Zoom. I didn't know it was a recording, but no, it's good. Thanks for having me.
Well,
Thanks
good.
for joining.
Are there questions or suggestions that folks have that we didn't touch on already, or they'd like to dig in a little deeper?
Mike,
Yeah.
I'd like to make a request to you as a member of the government operations that you give a little update about reapportionment. Somebody asked about that earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are working on it. We're working on it, and one of the challenges this year is Vermont didn't gain a lot of population, but there were population shifts. And one of the challenges locally is that all 4 southern counties, Bennington, Rutland, Windsor, and Windham, lost population. So we have to do some playing around with the maps, and there's going to be some changes. I don't think they're going to be monumental changes in the House districts. I don't think the Senate districts are changing significantly, but it's still all in play. We're trying to wiggle this and that, and I can tell you that there's a lot of people that are seeing changes, especially in the Rutland area, in the northeast part of Vermont, where they've significantly lost population, where there's going to be some big changes. But I don't have specifics right now that I can share because there's nothing finalized yet, and I don't want to put information out there until it's solid. But we've been hearing from boards of civil authority and individuals around the state. We're trying to take that in and balance that with the numbers. And it's really the numbers drive this bus. And we have to have even distribution of numbers. And with the places that have lost population, that's why we have to make some shifts. So hopefully by the next time we meet, there'll be something more definitive to share. Sarah?
You're muted. You're muted.
Okay. I'm on the Westminster Board of Civil Authority, and we've been looking at the maps as they come in. And I guess I just wanted to voice some concern about both the majority map and then the recently released minority map, and how that affects a town that I don't live in, but a town that's been included in both maps, and that's Brookline. And I spoke with a member of the Brookline Board of Civil Authority last week about how they're feeling about the maps. And it's not good, I just have to say. And I feel great sympathy for what might play out for their town. And it's because they're not, they've been attached sort of as a tail onto Westminster just to push the numbers up enough. So, it can either be a single representative or a double two representative district. And they really don't have much in common with this side of the ridge. Their focus is more westward with Newfane and Townsend. And it's just a very unfortunate mix. And they had initially sent volumes, I'll say, of comments to the first map, to the criteria, and they never heard anything back from the Legislative Apportionment Board, and that was pretty upsetting to them because they did put a lot of time and effort into it. And then to see that again, the new map has them just sort of tailed on. So I'm just going to put that out there as a concern for, the Brookline. They're not here because they're not in our district, but they might be. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
The challenge is that, there is a mountain in between here and there. Traditionally, though, I mean, when Toby Young and Peter Shumlin and David were the reps, the district entailed Dummerston, Putney, Westminster, Brookline, Athens, Grafton, but our population shifted significantly, and then it changed, and it's going to change again. So we're trying to do our best to align those, especially the small towns. Like Brookline, I think, has a population of a little more than 400. So it's hard to see, but we're trying to juggle those Rubik's cubes, and we have 14 of them that we're trying to do at the same time. So, but thanks for your feedback on that, Sarah. Jody, you have a question?
I don't have a question. I have a very big concern, and I'm very sorry that Becca was not able to be with us because I think she needs to hear us. I'm talking about the education, the House of Representatives Education Committee. They are headed off the rails right now. First of all, we have an unelected state board. Every single one of them has been appointed by Governor Scott, and you may not have known that. Also on the education board is Conlon. He is part of the problem from the beginning of Act 46. He was, and also because of this Ripton and, unmerging, he was the ACSD school board chair that refused to present the 800 plus person petition to voters to adjust their articles of agreement. He is now basically running the Ed Committee.
Jody, that's not so.
Well, you watch it and he is right there. So anyway, and the law says that the State Board of Education has to assign a town to an SU. You've got Oliver Olson coming crying to the State Board of Education and saying, we just can't do this. We don't know what we're going to do. And because he's an official, I think he is listened to more than the rest of us. Cheryl Charles and Margaret McLean had unbelievable testimony at the state. And I think they were just totally overlooked. So I think that the State Board of Education has gotten out of hand. When the legislature put in Act 46, they had to have known that Chapter 11 talked about withdrawal in the 50s. So they had to have passed it knowing that. And I sure as heck hope that things change. I know our representatives, et cetera, are with us. I'd like to listen to Cheryl Charles now because she was fantastic, and I will shut up.
Sure. So Jody, and thank you for your testimony to the committee as well.
Not sure they listened.
Yeah. Well, I think they do, and they've listened to us as well, because our legislative group has met with them too, and I think we've pushed things in a different direction there. As for the state board, Peter Shumlin pushed that when he was governor, because he said the governor should be able to appoint his board. And we said, well, that's fine with you, but what happens when we have a governor who wants to take things in a different way? And we're seeing that right now, where Governor Scott has multiple people on the state board now,
all of them
supporting private and independent schools above public schools. And that's a problem. That's the problem that we saw, but here it is. So we're looking at that, and I can tell you, we are trying to make sure that they slow down on their ideas to change Act 46. And I don't think anyone who's following this can argue that the Ripton problem is big, and they don't want to see things like that happen again, because Ripton was the opposite of Westminster, where they were not prepared, whereas Westminster had everything laid out in a row, and it was hard not to agree with them. So I'll stop now because I see Cheryl's hand is up.
Well, I'll make a quick comment, since I know we're running out of time as a group here. But please know that this topic needs to continue. The proposed changes in the law right now are actually substantial. To quickly summarize, the State Board of Education and the legislature is proposing another round of a study committee process. They're giving more authority to the State Board of Education. They're undermining and ignoring local control and the votes of the people. So this is a really big deal. And it further undermines really the respect for the voters' will. And it actually, when you think of the bigger picture around, it has the tendency to close or at least make it more difficult for smaller schools. That in turn impacts economic development. This is just a far bigger deal than it might look like. So please be ready to continue to be listening, as I know you, Mike and Michelle, are. And let's watch this as it unfolds. It looks like it will come out of the Education Committee, but it has a long way to go, and it's going to take all of us being vigilant. I'll be happy to write more and say more, but I won't take more time now. I will, though, say I'm sorry that Michelle wasn't recorded, not because of the shout out to me, but because of her great summary of all the things that she's working on, you and she. So I do hope, Michelle, you'll take the time to record that intro, because I think it'll be helpful to everybody. Thanks, all.
Thanks. Shauna, did you want to talk to this, or do you have another question?
A different question.
Go ahead.
But it's related to education. My concern has to do with both in the field of education and healthcare, that the numbers of staff and workers is declining precipitously. And it relates to what Becca said about how can we support people who are already living here, who may be able to work as go back into teaching or go back into healthcare. I'm aware that the Agency of Education makes licensing very complicated and difficult, and there's delays, and it's hard to communicate with them. And I don't understand why, if there's so much money floating around in the state, why can't we staff an agency adequately so that they respond to people who are looking to get licensed, so we can have enough teachers in the preschools and elementary schools and high schools?
Yeah, it's a good point. and we actually are looking into this, into relaxing some of the licensing, especially for people who had been teaching and retired, but who might want to get back into teaching, or occupational therapists are another area where we're really finding ourselves short, and kids that are struggling need that. So what we're trying to do right now is to allow for them to come back with a provisional license, still be able to collect the pension benefits that they had been, but add to the workforce. So it's a great point, and it's something we're working on, because we need more teachers, we need more paras, we need more occupational therapists right across and in other areas too, similar, the medical profession. And we're doing a lot to try and educate more nurses, more medical practitioners, mid-level practitioners. So, yep, it's a good point. So thanks, Shanna.
I wanted to say something.
Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Nader that I'm really thrilled that you're going to be running for Becca's Senate seat. So welcome back to the front line.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. It's
yeah, I'm very happy about that.
I appreciate that.
Nader, do you want to say a few words about that?
For sure. Thank you. I didn't want to, hijack your constituency meeting or anything like that, Mike, but thanks for the opportunity. We started the campaign early, and we're really trying to focus on spending the next couple of months just, listening. I feel like, I don't want to be one of those candidates who comes out of the woodwork saying, look, I have all the answers and I know what to do. So, we're going to be spending the next couple of months really listening all over the county and trying to really develop a platform that addresses a lot of the issues that we hear about. At the top of the list, when I came into the meeting, Becca was talking about housing on her recording, and that's been the number one issue. That's what we were talking about in Sarah Coffey's constituency meeting. And so along with housing, we're also hearing about workforce development and climate change. Now, of course, there's lots of other issues that we're going to, learn about and hear from people all over the county. And so, I'm looking forward to the next couple of months. And then, after that, we'll really start kicking things off and going around. Hopefully, if the weather's warm and COVID allows for it, we'll be able to have more in-person meetings, which I really hope for. And yeah, thanks for having me. And it's good to see all of you.
Paul?
Thank you. And I am also pleased that Nader is running for the Senate seat. He's mentioned an issue along with Becca as housing being a big problem in the state. I've been involved in housing for 40 plus years, maybe more. I can't think that far back. But legislation that was just passed removing just cause eviction, just having to have just cause eviction, will discourage small private people from investing in housing. I've in that period of time that I was involved with rental housing, I've only had to go through the process once. And let me tell you, it's an onerous process the way it exists presently, without having to prove that a tenant has either not paid their rent or has destroyed. The big problem is to prove that they've destroyed property or that they're not good neighbors they're not good neighbors, and they force good people out of the buildings. With no cause eviction, you don't have, the burden isn't as great, and you can just say, okay, it's time to leave. We're not, you're not the right tenant. You're not the right mix for this property because you're causing problems and I'm losing good people. And whenever I tell people that I'm in the rental housing business, they say, are you crazy? how long have you been doing this? He said, you must be insane. So I would encourage the legislators, when they start thinking about housing issues, that they look at the big picture and not just the fact that we're making it easier for tenants. There's a lot of good laws protecting the tenants, and it's very, very difficult for a landlord to get rid of an undesirable tenant. I mean undesirable from the sense of they're causing problems and they're just issues with other tenants and they're not taking care of the property. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
So, Paul, I'd just like to make a quick response to that. I mean, we just voted on this yesterday, I believe. And one of the things that we heard is that this was only related to Burlington. So this was a charter change related to Burlington. And 65% of Burlington voters, this is what they wanted. So really, I feel like our job in the legislature in approving charter changes is making sure that, that the process was followed as it should. And if the process was followed as it should, then we should follow what the voters want in their community. And so in that particular case, just cause eviction was one of the things they wanted in Burlington. It won't impact the rest of the state unless particular communities choose to embrace that. So that won't be affecting us in Windham County unless the individual towns choose to enact that.
I knew that was going to be the response, but there are several charter changes that Burlington also voted on that the legislature chose to ignore. So I think they focused on this one as opposed to the other two charter changes that they wanted. Thank you.
Anybody else have another question or comment? We've got a few minutes left.
Molly?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I just had a quick comment, not a question. I just want to express huge amounts of gratitude for Mike and Michelle, for Nodder, for Becca, for Jeanette for doing this work on our behalf. I had the opportunity to spend some time in Montpelier the last few months with the Legislative Pension Task Force, and it's always different when you're on the inside than when you're on the outside looking in, right? And I just not that I didn't already have a tremendous amount of respect, please. But I just want to say how very acknowledge the amount of volunteer work that you offer us, because I'm sure you're not compensated at all for the work that you do. And I also really appreciate your responses to me, both the ones agreeing and the ones pushing back. So I want to say that and just, apologize on the behalf of any time that people's emotions get win over on their understanding and compassion, because I think you are all coming from such a fabulous place, and I feel tremendously blessed to be represented by you, and really fortunate that you're willing to do the work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly. And I think you're being a little modest there about the pension task force, because my understanding is you met every week going back from the summer through the fall. So that was a huge task you took on. And I also want to thank you for your teaching in Dummerston. I met with your principal and toured the school before the session, and I'm sorry I couldn't have stopped and talked with you more, but Julianne was, I think, doing playground duty, so I was going to after school, so I needed to be out there with her. But it's obvious the Dummerston School is alive and as vibrant as you want our schools to be, and you all are doing some great work under circumstances that are heroic. So thank you.
Eva, do you have a final thought for us?
Well, I see a couple of hands up, so I think I should defer to those two hands. There was Jody and somebody else.
Jody, is that a new hand or a leftover hand?
That's a new hand. I just wanted to echo what Mike said about Dummerston School. I had 2 boys graduate from there. I've had 2 granddaughters graduate from there. They have been fantastically prepared for high school and doing very well. And I've always loved all the teachers, and Molly has been a fantastic teacher. That's all I wanted to say.
Here's to the teachers.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd just like to say before we wrap up, when I look around at the tiles on the Zoom screen, you know, Molly thanked Mike and myself. I thanked Cheryl. I mean, every person on this call, you're all public servants. You're all doing different things in our community. You know, Jim is so involved with the Institute, and Eva is the Queen of Putney, and, you know, Molly's been on the pension task force, and Sarah's a JP, and, you know, you're all of you that are here are involved in so many ways. I know Shana has been involved in volunteering with some of our asylum seekers. So thanks to all of you for being involved in our community. Honestly, it kind of chokes me up when I look at everybody. I think, wow, we are a great community. So thanks.
Eva, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll say something. It's snowing. I'm going to show you.
Oh,
Okay, get ready. Get ready, folks. Here it is.
Yeah.
I've been watching it too, Eva. It's beautiful.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh, did it cut? Anyway, it's snowing, and I think it's so fabulous that we have some snow because we have the Harris Hill happening, and people come expecting snow, and sure enough, they're going to get it, which is great, isn't it?
It sure
100
is.
years of Harris Hill. Jody, did you ever go when you were a young whippersnapper? That was
Yes,
last year.
I went as a young whippersnapper, and we lived on Cedar Street for a few years before we moved to Dummerston, and we always walked down. It's been a great thing for the area. It's too cold for me now to stand there and watch. So, although I love the snow.
Yes.
Oh, before we go, I also want to recognize David Dean here, who has retired from the legislature, but just been appointed to the state's Fish and Wildlife Board. So, David, I want to thank you for your service, and looking forward to bringing that perspective from Windham County to the state. Are there things that you're looking to work on there?
Yeah, some of them have been touched on in earlier conversations here. Wanton waste has been an issue that's been in front of me for years. Trapping and a modernization of the trapping laws, and open seasons on all kinds of critters, including crows and coyotes.
Yeah.
We hunted out our wolves. They're extirpated. The coyote has become the top predator and is needed to be a balancer of the populations of our wild. And it's the wild, wild west out there. Shoot them, string them up, whatever. And so
What about hounding?
Hounding is well established. Someone mentioned earlier loose hounds. That's a problem. But otherwise, hounding is a well established, well disciplined sport.
Sport? That ain't no sport.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of Vermonters would disagree with you. In fact, I disagree with you, Eva. It is. Those are magnificent animals. And extremely intelligent animals that these people work with. So,
are you talking about the bears or the hounds?
The wireless.
Yeah, if we could just switch off. I wanted to make a point in terms of the discussion about the redistricting. Michael and Michelle are carrying messages for this district, for the people of this district, and they bring it into the process. And I want to remind people that in order to pass legislation, you need 76 votes in the House, 16 votes in the Senate, and a signature from the governor, so that not every detail is going to come out the way you want it. When Westminster lost North Westminster, that was over my dead, twitching, screaming body, but 76 votes, 16 votes, and a signature by the governor. So I think it's important that they hear from us, meaning Michael and Michelle. But please don't have expectations of ability to respond to your concern or your community's concern without taking in the whole state and how they're going to put those votes together in order to come up with a redistricting plan that will pass.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave,
you.
for that.
Thanks for that reminder, David. It's a lot of juggling we're doing, and thanks for taking the work on. I know you're also continuing to work with Trout Unlimited, right? On water quality.
Oh, yeah. And March 24th, we're going to put in a plug. We're meeting at Mount Snow with the U.S. Forest Service, Vermont Fish and Wildlife, Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation to look at the plans for the Somerset region of the Green Mountain National Forest. 3 years ago, a new plan was put in place. This is an update that our chapter is bringing all these people together to work on. And if you want more information, just email me and I'll get it out.
Great. Thank you, David. Any other questions that you want to jump on quickly before we have to go?
I just had one quick question for Dave about that, the new plan for that area. Does that plan include a change in logging prospects, or is it a
Yes, the logging schedule and
Yeah.
the areas that will be cut
Yeah.
and the infrastructure that'll have to go in place to move the logs is
Yeah.
all part of that plan.
Okay, thank you.
It's called the IRP.
Okay.
It reminds me of something else we're looking at in the current use program. Right now, the plan is that you have a 10-year plan if you want to put your land into current use, and you need to have a forest plan. And you need to have a licensed forester to make your plan. And every 10 years, you have to do a cutting. Now, that's past practices. These are good forest practices. But we know that we need all the trees we can to pull carbon out of the air now. So we're looking at some possible changes where we allow people to stay in there and not cut trees. And there's a philosophy called rewilding that we're looking at, which is going to allow tracts of forest to stay as is and not necessarily have to be cut, because we need those trees. The trees are doing a great job pulling carbon out of the air. So stay tuned. That's something that I think there's going to be a lot of support. We certainly want to continue to support the current use program for farmland, for forestry, but we might want to update it, and that might be a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks again to everybody. Appreciate you taking the time, and please know if anything comes up between this and next month, feel free to get in touch with us. Take care.